problem sooner than we think. I mentioned the India being a quarter of the talent pool by 2030. That's not too far away. But we're also already seeing, I believe, a real mismatch at the moment between skills and jobs. I'm not sure we are developing through our education systems, secondary education systems, colleges. I'm not sure we are matching the skills with the demand for roles. And we're seeing high youth unemployment around the world, high unemployment in many parts of the world, developed countries as well as emerging economies or growth markets as they're so called. And that can lead to unrest, that can lead to instability, that can lead to conflict in many ways. And so I would argue that some of the stresses and strains that we're seeing, some civil unrest and some conflict, is actually caused by, or the underlying causes of that are actually related to this talent and education skills issue. If you take a manufacturing company that is making chocolate and there is a problem with cocoa production in Côte d'Ivoire, the trees aren't giving the yield, the farmers are leaving the rural areas and going into cities. You don't sit there and watch your market destroyed if you're a large chocolate manufacturer, of which we all like eating, I'm sure. These companies have gone up and have intervened high and back in their suppliers and their supply chain, working with farmers, thinking about how the farmers are going to stay in these rural areas, stay farming, have the technology to improve the yields, have the schools to educate their kids. They're thinking way back up. And for me, I think there's an analogy with what we need to do with talent as well, that companies, especially human capital companies like our own, need to be thinking about what interventions are we going to make if we sit in our hands as business leaders and don't get involved when, frankly, some domestic education systems are fairly broken, when we're going to see that the way that talent is developed is going to be radically different from when I went to school or went to university a long time ago. It won't be in the same kind of classrooms. A lot of it is going to be online. How we fund this and make sure that everyone, irrespective of their background, has the right, and I call it a right, to a quality education that is going to develop the skills that we need. So we need to match the demand with the supply, and we need to think about how we fund and raise the investment collectively to ensure that every child has the right to fulfill their potential, and that businesses have the ability to get more involved in developing the skills that they will need to grow in the future. I think there is a big, I would say, disconnect amongst leadership of many companies who I believe still are seeing the world in black and white terms. On my left hand, we have the business that we run, which is about making money, which is about minimizing costs, maximizing revenue, growth, share price. That's our business. And on my right hand is where we do good. It might be the CSR program, philanthropy, making sure that the human rights of our employees are supported, making sure that our environmental footprint is decent. But these are still, to my mind, seen as being very separate amongst too many leaders in too many companies. And I believe that in the future, we're going to see that as increasingly a false dichotomy between do you focus on the left or do you focus on the right. I believe that not just with things like the talent time bomb, but whether it's with health, how we feed the next billion, how we nourish people, how we get access to the billion that don't have access to energy in the world at the moment. These big challenges are actually opportunities for business, maybe in disguise. And that actually solving, when I come back to the education issue, solving that education issue is actually going to be a business opportunity for many, many companies to bring their technology, to bring their networks, to bring their monitoring and evaluation to bring their capital and investment to actually develop that talent in the future. And so for me, this is a paradigm shift that's required to a certain extent. And I hope and believe that there is a cadre of leadership coming through that are actually open to a new way of thinking about these things. I think there is a cadre of leadership who are maybe at the shall I say, the twilight of their careers, who have grown up with a very successful model of business over the last 3 or 4 decades, where frankly you didn't necessarily have to think in that world. You could see the world in black and white, left hand, right hand ways. The future leadership coming up, and certainly when I think about the employees that we are bringing on in their 20-somethings today or 30-somethings, they don't see that separation. They see these things as converging.